loud. Piece of the planet, you know what it is. A Deece of the Bishop. I'm chilling the most. Really happy to be here today. I have my good man, Kevin Meredith, man. This guy is fucking awesome. I hope this shows up in the damn screen because so many times you see what it just did? You see that? You can't really see the damn cover because
they can. That's good.
Yeah, there we go. The Medicine Kitchen. Listen, evidence-based recipes for health and healing. Let me be really honest with you guys. Many years ago, um, you know, I wasn't really that healthy, guys. I mean, you know what I mean? It was just that simple. And I met this woman, and she gave me a book about how to eat better. And not only did I look better and feel better, like I was able to help my kid like recover from eczema. You know what I mean? Like crazy stuff, just like by cool diet stuff. And I started taking what I put in my body way more serious after that. This book, man, The Medicine Kitchen, is really good. And I believe that like it's a good book for every household, but it's really good for single dudes, bros. Listen to what I'm telling you. When I was a youngster, like 10 years old, one day I came and I was like, "What's for breakfast?" He was like, "I don't know. What are you making?" And I was like, "I don't know how to cook." He was like, "You're about to learn." I was like, "But I don't want to cook." And he said, "Listen, single guys, pay attention." He said, "Every man should know how to cook on their own. Every man." He was like, "And when you become an older man that's single, being able to cook is cool because most guys don't know how." And I'll just tell you, my dad was right. Okay. It worked. And so you need this book for your house, but you need this book for your healing. All right. So, Kevin, welcome to Bishop Chronicles. We go back, by the way. We've been, when did we meet? What year was that? 2021?
Yeah, yeah, probably now. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, yeah,
2021.
yeah. 21,
Right.
21.
Yeah.
Blimey.
And we hit it off from the beginning. Cool dude, purple belt jiu-jitsu coach over at GBRL in Leeds. And we worked together, kind of launching the teen kids. Was the teen kids team? What was that? What was that we were doing?
Yeah, it was a kids' comp team we were doing, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
obviously just general classes as well.
yeah. It was really cool. So like when he told me he was doing this book, I was really juiced about it. And when I got it, I knew it was never going to be whack, but I didn't expect it to be as thorough as it is, bro. So what made you want to do this book, and how long did it take? Because it's got a lot, bro. Like it's a big ass book, guys. So if you get this book, not only will you be healthier, but like you'll be able to wow the chicks with the good various meals. But what made you make this book?
I think originally it was pretty selfish in its essence of why I wanted to make it because I've done it because I've done what I do for such a long time, and it's very eclectic from nutrition and my Chinese martial arts and my PT and corrective exercise and all these different aspects. What I found is from when I started sort of studying in when I was 21, so what's that now? It's like yes, like 30 no, so
But you only look
25 years
25.
ago. Thank you very much. That's because Zoom automatically adds filters. Um, so about 25 years ago, I started kind of studying and looking into sort of martial arts. And obviously, as you know, as a martial artist, with that, especially Chinese martial arts, there's the idea of the yin and yang, so healing and fighting come hand in hand. Um, so I started sort of studying from then, and then I've basically just built collections and collections. There's this of information, of research. Obviously, done lots of different courses since there, like more Western sort of scientific courses, like level 4 nutrition and all that sort of
Mm,
stuff as well.
mm-hmm.
And what I found is I've kind of managed to the older stuff before, obviously Google Drive and all the rest of it. I've managed to kind of keep in books and scan and all the rest of it. And then what I found was now when I try and I come across something I want to remember something, so obviously you don't remember it all. So I was like, well, all I want to do to start with is try and collate it all together into some sort of compendium that I can
Yeah.
kind of refer back to for myself. And as I started collating all of the information, there was just loads of it. And I was like, there's so much in here that's really useful. And it's basically what I found was it's kind of like a lot of my life is basically, and my passions are all in this thing. So
Mm-hmm.
then I just had this idea a couple of years ago as well. This actually could be a book. I just have to kind of create some sort of narrative that weaves it together.
Right.
And obviously, it just so turned out really like a couple of years ago, I'm at a point in my life where I've now got my own fitness business, and my kids are a little bit older, so I have a little bit more time on the evenings. They're not as
Yeah.
demanding. They want to do their own stuff. So I was just like, right, let's see if I. And I spoke to my dad actually, and he was like, you could really weave this into a bit of a story rather than it just being a self-help book. And there's so many of them.
Right. Right.
You could make something that's just much, yes, it is still in that category, but it's just so much more. Um, and of course, because of the two worlds that I live in, I'm kind of constantly doing corrective exercise and nutrition, having to obviously be up to date with scientific research. But I also have this, complete other spectrum that people see it as another spectrum. It's kind of like traditional Chinese medicine and what a lot of people would class as like woo woo, not real medicine
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always been very rigorous about the stuff that I say about sort of alternative medicine, for example, and I make sure I'm backing it up properly and I'm not just, espousing
Yeah.
something that someone else has said as truth, because obviously that's the problem in that field is it's not regulated enough. So there's a lot of people that just get away with
Yeah.
shams and all the rest of it. So in the end, I was like, right, there is so much out there about old wisdom and food that as I'm seeing it crop up more and more and more in modern research. I was like, well, I need a book that shows how the history of food came about, how some of, these incredible civilizations that developed independently and then obviously over time cohesively. But there's these single things that have existed from the very beginning. There's certain herbs that have been used for thousands of years and everyone's used it. So, and there's like, there must be truths in that, in
Can you
those
can you give
things,
me an
why they're
example
so
of that?
popular.
Because I don't doubt
Like,
you. I know what you're
yeah,
saying is real, but
sure.
like,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you look at something like turmeric for like anti-inflammatory. You look at garlic for like
yeah,
antimicrobial and antibacterial. You look at ginsengs and black pepper. All these different herbs and spices and foods that basically were used across multiple generations, multiple civilizations, and they all kind of came up with the same idea. So I was like, well, there's definitely truth in there, and modern science is proving it. So let's create basically a story of those civilizations and how it came about, and how now that modern science is proving it, and then create a book that basically shows both sides of that. Here's the history. Here's how it can help you, and here also, obviously, in the book, there's 150 cited research papers in there. So it's heavily researched, and it's also backed up by one of like a world leading professor at Leeds University who did all of that. Basically pressure tested
yeah.
all of my citations for me and made sure they're all rigorous. So it's obviously listed at the Leeds University for their nutrition courses as one of
Shout
their
out.
suggested reading books, right? So that's the idea really. So anyone can then say, "Oh, do you know what? I've always liked the idea of that, but I can also know that it's actually rigorously
That
tested. It's
there's
actually
some
actually
proof to it,
backed up. Yeah,
right?
it's not just another, TCM book or another Ayurvedic medicine book or whatever. But I'm fascinated in history and I'm fascinated in health, so the two just come together
It's
so
a great
nicely for me,
fusion.
which is
Such a great fusion. So, guys, you know how much I love tea. That's part two. Medicinal teas and beverages. And if you know me, I love a good beverage.
oh, nice mug.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah, yeah. Shout out to the homie Sanjay who laced me with that mug. But like, guys, you can get into tea in here. You can look and see different teas that help your cardiovascular health, different teas that help your metabolic balance, like digestive teas. Like, this is so cool. Like, you would have to buy several books to get what's in the medicine kitchen, right? And that's cool.
Yeah.
And also, I think too, like, what was it? Who was the Greek father of medicine? Um, why is my brain shorting on
Let food be thy medicine and medicine
this
be
to
thy
be that
food.
food, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
it, bro. Like, this is it. You would need several books, guys, and you don't. You can buy this on Amazon today, right? You can have this, and these recipes are simple, right? They're very simple. So it's not like stuff that's gonna make you feel like you got to go be a chef or whatever. This is gonna be the stuff that helps you get through. Um, One of the things that I did like here is the pre and post workout nutrition. Like, talk about that for a little bit, because this is a thing. Like, I'm not trying to clown anybody, but like, I laugh at the idea of pre-workout. You know what I mean? It's just like stirring up Kool-Aid and crack together so you can get amped up before you go lift, right? Like, like I swear to
Mm.
God, I have never had pre-workout in my life, and I
Oh,
never
no.
will because I already know natural things that can help, align me and you know what I mean, feed my system. But can you talk for a little bit about this pre and post workout nutrition because it is one of my favorite sections, and I thought it was really important in these times that you have it in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when people think of pre-workout now, unfortunately, it's been kind of ruined, really, because in reality, what people think of pre-workout, like you said, is just like a highly noxious blend of chemicals that basically, I mean, I've taken it a couple of times because I was just like, what is it all about? Like early doors when I was sort of getting into it, and I saw people going, "Oh, you got to have your pre-workout," and I've had it. It like makes my face itch and stuff. It's like horrendous. And I've always like, well, although some days I don't want to work out, I don't need like that level of like amping up to work out. So I guess I'm never saying it's not something I would take, but I can see why people do. But I guess it's what the goal of your workout is as well. If you're there to like PB every day and you're trying to like heavy power lift and all the rest of it, then maybe
Yeah.
that's like smelling salts. Maybe that's what you need if you're Eddie Hall and trying to break some world records. But unfortunately, people just copy their idols, don't they? And they don't necessarily need it themselves. Or go to a local gym. You're not Eddie Hall like lifting half a ton.
Yeah, totally real.
But in this case, we're talking about pre and post workout from a sports science nutrition background. And then that is more about, like anything when it comes to food, it's about fueling your body to make sure you give it the best quality nutrients for whatever activity you're going to do, whether that is just kicking around the office. And therefore, it's like nutrition that's going to fuel your brain. Whether it's like, say, with a health condition in this case, obviously, if you're doing any kind of workout, you need to fuel your body before, depending on the type of workout, and you need to obviously fuel it. Not necessarily, a lot of people talk about it has to be done directly after, but you have to eat afterwards at some point. And again, that's to help the recovery from the workout. So
Yeah.
pre-workouts, for example, for cardiovascular health is going to be more based around the right sorts of carbohydrates, hydration, possibly electrolytes and different types of, kind of minerals and salts that you might need before like a heavier cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah.
And same for recovery. But again, you might need more protein in that mix. And then obviously, if you're weight training, again, it's making sure that you're eating enough protein. Again, not too many fats before workouts because they're harder to digest. So that's something you might have afterwards. So it's just guiding you to fuel yourself with real food, really. Of course, in the workout stuff, it's quite hard sometimes to get lots of proteins. There's things like whey protein in there, good quality proteins, or obviously you can change that if you're vegan to a pea protein or something.
Totally.
But yeah, it's from like what I would advise my clients from a sports science background to be taking. And there's lots of different styles of recipes. So it might be smoothies, it might be yogurt, it might be so whole foods and kind of quicker, easier to digest meals as well.
You know, I also like, and I'm saying this selfishly, chapter 14 is about functional foods for, I always say that word wrong. What is the word?
So satiation. So like
Yeah,
satiation. So like yeah, if you so
horrible with that
basically
word.
yeah, obviously, if you kind of and again, proteins and fibers are usually going to be those things. So yeah, anytime you're thinking about satiety, like it's basically being able to fill yourself up. Often people eat the wrong foods to fill
Yeah.
themselves up, and obviously they just stay hungry.
But this section is about glucose regulation. And I am like
Yes,
so close to pre-diabetic, dude. I'm like,
right.
So like I'm doing a lot of crazy stuff. But this is why I'm telling so many dudes to get the book, right? Because you're gonna get these tricks and tools of the trade to understand the order you should eat things in, what stuff is how, in what way is what you're eating when you have sugar and stuff in it is, impacting your body, especially if you have diabetes, pre-diabetes, or glucose issues, man.
Yeah, and again, that's really. I think it's a problem for most people is things like that, and most people again are if they don't eat enough protein, they don't eat enough fiber. We're supposed to eat around 30 grams of fiber a day, which obviously is going to help when we ingest fiber. It helps slow down the absorption of things like sugars. within our foods, and obviously then that means it's going to be more slow releasing. So people think about fiber as being something that kind of regulates your bowels more than anything else. Oh, I eat fiber for my bowels,
Right,
but in
right.
reality, it's so much more important than that. It feeds the bacteria within your stomach that's going to and
That's
the
your pre and
the
probiotic
right
setups.
exactly. So that's going to obviously help proliferate the right type of bacteria. Those types of bacteria will be less fed on sugars, for example, and therefore they're gonna, it's gonna just mean that all the cravings are less. Yeah, it's just, and obviously, like I say, as you ingest those foods, it helps the absorption as well of those, sort of slows the absorption of those foods. Um, and obviously, proteins is another one. You'll know if you eat a lot of protein, it's very filling. So making sure that we're sort of taking that in with each meal at a decent amount is going to also help that. Whereas most people are just fall more towards the sort of processed foods,
Totally,
low in fiber, low in
totally.
protein, probably higher in fat, higher in sugar. You'll know. It's been a long time since I had one, but you'll know it's like when you go to something like McDonald's, right? And you're like, well, I'll get a Big Mac meal or whatever, and you eat
Yeah,
it, and you're
yeah,
like full at the time, and then literally like an hour later, you're like, well, I'm starving. It's just like boom
yeah,
through the system. Blood sugar spikes because everything's full of shots, but sugar, so you get this like little
yeah.
hit of energy, and it's gone.
Boom!
And
It
then of
just
course,
tanks, and
all
you
that's
can
happening,
feel.
yeah, all that's happening with your glucose is you're just doing this, and with that comes tiredness.
Yeah,
That sort of dips in energy, and then you just basically, well, your body's saying, I'm low in energy, give me some more quick fuel, and you go up again, and you just
there
spend your
you
day
go.
spiking, and this is where you start to get insulin insensitivity. So you basically your body it's having so much. It's working overtime that your body has to produce more and more insulin every time to get better and better until you get to the point where it struggles to keep up, basically. And of course, it's also then storing the excess as fat because it's not locking it away into your muscle because maybe you don't have enough muscle because you don't eat enough protein and all these things. Your muscle is like a glucose sink. It obviously needs glucose. It stores it. It's where most of your glucose is stored in your body for ready to fuel your activities.
Right.
So the more you have, the more it sucks that up. It gives it to the brain. Obviously, it stores it some of it and around in the liver, and then obviously you've got your muscle as well. So there's a few things in there, but it's so important to consider how you eat and why you eat and kind of what you're doing. Like you talked about when I watched your podcast on vegan
Oh yeah,
and your
yeah, yeah, yeah.
your trainer, that
With
was
cat
excellent.
fitness, yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously thanks for mentioning the book on there. That
Of
was really
course.
cool. But again, for what he was talking about, some of his clients, that's a big factor as well.
No, it's really real, man. It's really real. I think that it's weird. In the West, I feel like we have all this access to stuff that we should be eating, but we're usually distracted and eating what we want, like we said, like McDonald's or this and that, you know what I mean? And then I think on top of that, frighteningly, like I just find that like even though there's this idea that we could and should be eating healthier, that like the general public's understanding of what we should be eating just seems far below what it should be. Our schools are horrible at it. It like, why do you think we're so bad in the West at really understanding what we should eat, when, why? Like, what do you think is at the root of that? Is it the McDonald's and the fast food people really taking over the media? Is it school education? Is it families breaking up? Is it a little bit of both? Like, what do you
I
think?
think it's all of those things. I think it's all of those things. Again, the idea of the book, we talk about the practical aspects and like the types of food and the recipes, but in reality, the overriding theme of the book is understanding about the systems that we live within and the importance of understanding where your food comes, the quality of the food, um, and kind of we've lost that connection with food completely.
Yeah.
If you go back a few generations, that wasn't the case pre-war. I'd say what happened, especially in the UK, post-war, was then there was this huge drive for farming, and
Mm,
it was much more about monocrop farming, and obviously in the States that's changed as well over there, and so. I think it's a number of things. Obviously, we're more densely populated. We are living busier lives.
Way
We
busier.
Yeah, exactly. Industrial revolution meant that people moved from the fields, practical outdoor work into factories. That could basically people could be working at all hours of the day, and that's a big disconnect when you spend, you go
Mm,
home and then you just go to a factory or your office. So we've
noted.
lost that connection, I think, with nature. At the same time, obviously, the food industry boomed, and obviously, like any industry, the food industry is about profit. And, as much as you might have some companies that try to be more moral with that, obviously, and like any big business, most of the people that sit on that board that take profit out of it are going to want profit. So
Yeah. What if
therefore,
you know
the,
what I mean?
yeah, exactly. The choices become more about, well, how can we repackage the same ingredients that are as cheap as possible, which is usually a grain product, in as many ways as possible. So, and then obviously the supermarket means that we're more disconnected from our local farm produce. And again, something the book talks about is how important it is to source your food more locally, more ethically. You'll
Yeah.
enjoy it more for that reason, but obviously that sets your whole idea about food and your respect for food much more. And of course, people have, there's a lot of people that would say they struggle to buy more expensive food as well. So then people go for the cheap options. If you go into any supermarket, whether it's in the UK, probably anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the States, you have fresh food in a few aisles, and then the bulk of the supermarket is basically sugar, fat, grain. That's
Repackaged
pretty much
mega.
it. Repackaged, many, many times over. And all they have to do is put high protein on it, high fiber on it. They just
Yeah, and then
change the pack. Yeah, you can have the same food and repackage it five different ways with clever wordplay, and five different types of customers will buy it,
no,
based
it's
on,
totally real. You
so
know,
there's that too, I think, obviously, which is a big thing. And then of course the other thing is, because people are so busy, we are just much more we don't take the time to think about eating, like you said, as a family unit necessarily together. We don't take the time to kind of value cooking, because we're told that, why do that? It's easier just to chuck it in the microwave. You think about, for me, when I was a kid, you might remember this, microwaves were massive, and all mums
they
had
were
like a microwave
gigantic.
cookbook. You never need to use anything again. Use this microwave cookbook,
Just
every
put it in there,
recipe,
beep, trash.
yeah, microchips, all this stuff. So we're told that you're busy and therefore you need convenience. And so people buy into that rhetoric as well. So people are busier. Before, there might be one person that stayed at home with the kids and worked less, one person
Hmm.
that worked, so therefore they made the meals. Now, most couples, most people both have careers, so they're busier with their kids.
Hmm.
And then again, schools, it's taught, there's no real education on it. So we're not now brought up to understand food, where it comes from, how to balance a plate, how to put what protein, carbohydrates, and fibers, and how to put that together. So it's such a complex mix. Food is so emotionally based, so people are more stressed. So
Huge,
when emotions come into play,
huge.
we use food as a tool, an emotional coping mechanism. So again, this concept of, like, you get it all the time. Oh, I'm just going to treat myself. And treat myself means I'm going to have a chocolate bar. I'm going to have a
Yeah,
bottle of wine, a
yeah. I'm gonna have
beer,
a triple burger.
yeah, and it's like, I'm going to treat myself. In reality, when you think about that, like, well, no, in reality, most of the time, what we're talking about is you're going to basically put toxins into your body, rather than so you're not treating yourself. It's just a coping mechanism. But you can't argue that. That's just a strong response that people have to food. And we're told that, come on, treat yourself, spend some money on
Yeah,
Amazon and eat this food. And so we're told, and then people want to treat themselves every day, right? And then it becomes a habit. And before you know
and
it,
then you just
those
fell
treats
off.
is yeah, your treats are now your diet.
Yeah, no, it's real. And it's interesting because I just done this talk at Albany State University, and part of it was talking about the cultural impact of the Wu Tang Clan, like kind of around the world, and you know what I mean, with this mix of martial arts and chess and philosophy, and I talked about how a lot of the guys in the Wu are vegan. Not all of them are, but most of them are. And I kind of talked about how for Black America, a lot of what we look at in the vegan space is like it's gotten popular in the last few years. But I said that when you look at the Wu Tang Clan, A lot of their vegan push in hip hop is a ripple effect of the kung fu films, right? You know, you got the monk who's just eating noodles and vegetables and whatever, whatever. And I was like, and these are all these other rappers that are now also vegan, right? Whether it was Common or NLE Choppa or all these other dudes, right? Not just Wu Tang people. And I said, because I'm talking in Albany, Georgia, the deep south, where everything is fried, comes with cheese on it, and tastes fantastic. I ain't gonna front. I was out there eating fried fish with cheese grits, and it was so good. But what I was trying to tell everybody was, I am not trying to make all of you vegan because I am not vegan. I said I just had some grilled chicken on a Caesar salad right before I came here. I said, but what I'm trying to get you to do, and I think what the Wu Tang Clan is trying to get you to do, is eat with more deliberate consciousness and intentionality about what you're putting in your body and why. Right? Why am I eating this salad? Why am I eating this fruit? Why am I eating this chicken or beef or whatever you're eating? Know why you're doing it and be present to what you're putting in your body. I think that's one of the bigger, well, there's many, but one of the bigger flaws of the West. You know what I mean? And how we deal with food is that it feels so much more consumer based than present and conscious. You know what I mean? Could you talk to a little bit
Absolutely.
about that idea for a bit in any way you want?
100%. No, and that's that, and I, considering how kind of conscious I am of that, I still find that so difficult. So one of my first experiences of this idea of conscious eating was obviously in China, and in the temple. Like you're not a lot of the time, obviously for Westerners over there, they weren't strict with it, but obviously the people that are actually monks within the temple, they don't talk at all while they have their food. Obviously, their food again is very simple, but it's always extremely balanced.
Mm,
Yes, a lot of the time, in Buddhism as well. Obviously, vegetarian is very common. In Chan Buddhism, not necessarily. There's also quite a lot of people that would eat meat within that. But again, if they
right,
are like myself, they are eating it in a kind of a much more conscious way. So then, like for myself, I don't go and buy meat from a supermarket. I
right.
get raw milk and eggs and honey from a local place that I know that's obviously I know how the animals are treated and all the rest of it. Well, now have our own eggs because we've got our own chickens, but so that's when I'm seeing that and trying that is so difficult, like kind of being mindful with every bite. That's kind of like the Zen idea, isn't it? And like every bite, I'm present, and the idea of that's wonderful, but it's so hard to practice. But I think even
Yeah,
if you are just, again, it's like a ritual, isn't it? If you and I know you know this because I've seen you cooking, um, the experience of putting food together and understanding that that food is nourishing my body in different ways. In reality, is it should be a practice of gratitude, and I don't think we're grateful for the food we have. I think we just take it for granted,
yo,
and we don't value it because a lot of the time we're buying stuff that we don't want to be great, have gratitude for, particularly because it's just crap. We should be lucky we can eat. Obviously, there's people starving in the world. I don't mean that, but what I mean is
no, totally.
when I've got locally, when I've got wild shot venison and I'm cooking that with vegetables that me and Louise have grown from our garden. And I've got, this beautiful, plate in front of me. That's something that, is about gratitude. So I think it's hard to be present all the time, but I think it's just that idea of understand, especially when you cook for other people, because then you are passing on that message to other people. Something we do a lot in our business is we make things and we give them to our clients. Louise is amazing at that. Every week she'll have made something new, and people will be trying it, and you can see they're enjoying it. They're like, "What? This is made of this, but it's so nice." I thought,
Yeah,
and then of course their mindset starts to shift. And we talk about the sustainable eating. We talk about that kind of idea about appreciating quality and trying to have that. And I'd rather eat, for example, in the book, it's all plant-based. Now, when people say plant-based now, they think vegan, but in reality, that's kind of been the one kind of gripe I have with that is like, You don't have to be vegan to be plant-based. Plant-based
True.
means a foundation of plants, which is exactly how, I would argue that is exactly how we're meant to eat. That doesn't mean we should
Yeah,
never eat meat or we weren't meant to eat meat because we are able to digest both, but
totally.
it shouldn't be the one thing, the fiber, the micronutrients, the antioxidants, all of the different things that are in fruit and vegetables should be our foundation. And there's fiber, there's water, and all these other things within those.
Minerals.
And then, of
Yeah.
course, and then the addition of meat is like, right, I also need, you know, high quality, bioavailable protein that is as ethically sourced as possible. Now, the moral argument of like we shouldn't kill animals is a whole different, that's a
Yeah, yeah,
personal
that's a
thing.
whole different discussion. But as far as like
Yeah,
nutrients and whether your body responds and all that, no, totally, man.
exactly.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I just think, this book is such a gem, man. This book is such a gem, guys. So listen, I want you to make sure you go get the Medicine Kitchen on Amazon. It's really good, and the wisdom in it is several fold. It's not just a cookbook. It has such. I mean, there's stuff about essential oils and concentrated extracts in here, how you can use them, and how they help your body. Like it's really cool. And again, like I also think that in a world where, and I don't want to be like catastrophizing, but like food's more expensive, right? We need to be able to get the most out of it, right? In these times, like you're going to want a cookbook like this so that you're not just eating trash and trying to make sure that, oh, everybody feels full, right? You're going to want that
Yeah.
nutrient. You're going to want, to know, oh, like, how many women do I know that need more iron in their diet, right? And I've said it before, but I had H. pylori, I had this whole intestinal thing, and my doctor told me like you need iron, but do not take iron supplements. And I was like, oh, I already have some at the house. He said, listen, when you take iron supplements, your body doesn't really absorb it as much as you think, and most of that iron comes out in your urine. He's like,
Yeah.
but
I
when
mean,
the body eats iron naturally, it always absorbs it. And you can never OD on vegetables like squash and you know what I mean, other iron rich
mm,
uh, uh, foods. And I went back again to this book that the lady had introduced me to a while ago. But this is what I'm saying: you can really make sure that if you want to have enriched your blood with iron, there are all kinds of plants you can take to do that with, right?
yeah.
And you can do it with beef or lamb as well, but you can do it, I think, more effectively and more cost effectively with plants. And again, your body will always absorb it. You don't have to worry
Yeah,
about
and
like
you've
your
got
iron
obviously
supplement.
you've got
Yes.
like the like liver and things like that. Of course, if you're a meat eater, that are
Yeah.
very dense again that your body loves. But I think the other thing in here that I kind of wanted to get across to people to understand as well, because one of the sort of overriding themes is the idea of connection back to nature,
Yeah.
and trying to rebuild our like healthier food systems in terms of more locally sourced high quality foods and getting away from this idea of like monocrops
Yeah.
and then because it's monocrops needing the pesticides and the herbicides and all the chemicals that come with that. So that's one thing is kind of like working more with the planet for our food and getting back in
Yeah.
touch with nature. But the other thing in there that's like in some ways just as if not more important in the short term is this idea of like getting obviously with the title understanding the problems we have, how our health system right now isn't really working for us. People aren't, although people are living longer, and you can look at life expectancy and say, oh, well, people are living longer, so we must, and you get that all the time with people going, well, if like old ways were, as good as new ways, then why do people die so much earlier? Because our average life expectancy is going up. And that is true. We can keep people alive a lot longer. But what
Yeah.
we have is decades of people decades of the end of our life that people live in pain or are on multiple medications keeping them alive, basically. And the book, obviously, it's mostly based from sort of UK stuff. That's where I am, but it applies into the States as well. Is this idea of understanding this kind of thought process we now have about when we go to our doctor, the expectations is when we go to our GP, our general practitioner, people expect medication back because it's an easy fix. And we've got into this loop now where people, GLP-1's another example of that, where people, even if they just want to lose a bit of weight, rather than making lifestyle changes, again, this idea of busyness or this idea of kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like they deserve to have, they should just be given stuff, rather than work for it.
Yeah.
Is what our medical system is based on. And of course, the whole pharmaceutical industry loves that because it's like, great,
Yeah.
well, you just want it, so we'll give you it. And the other thing with the book is this idea of like, for in the UK, I don't know how much you know, but our NHS, which is basically one of the most incredible things, it should be really a blueprint for around the world. This idea of free medical care, not needing to have insurance. People basically,
Right.
if you need it, you get it, and it's paid via tax.
Yep.
Is crumbling around our feet slowly but surely. It's being overstretched and overreached, and people need more and more medication. They offer
What?
more and more things. And the idea of people taking accountability back for their own health, which is really one of the big overriding facts in this book, not accepting that they should just take, oh, they've got high blood pressure, so they should take they should take a medication for that. They've got high cholesterol, so they should just take a statin for that. They have, you know, they're a bit overweight, so the GP won't give them a
Yeah.
GLP-1 to help them reduce their appetite. So they're just going to buy it privately, and of course that means more, though, more people do it because it becomes socially acceptable.
Yep.
People going, actually, I can empower myself. The food that I eat on a daily basis can solve a lot of these problems if I just take the time to help myself.
Totally
And
agree.
the further we go away from that, the further actually all these health systems crumble and people become less healthy. Um, yeah, and in reality, the cost of living in an old people's home is, people don't realize this. They save money for retirement, and they don't realize that a good proportion of the population will spend all of their retirement money on a nursing home rather than enjoying it, doing the things they want to do, because they don't have the health once they get to retirement. So that's a big factor in this as well. It's like, understand the history, understand that the health system we have isn't working for us. And if we're
It's
going to
not.
shift back to food as a form of not necessarily medicine, obviously that's kind of, it gives people this idea of the medical and the food, but as this preventative medicine. And then if we're going to do that, we have to have the food systems in place that are actually healthy as well, and not just continue with what we're doing in terms of our food system. So it's really very much about this kind of the health industry and the food industry, and the kind of what's working and what's not working. And as individuals, how we can kind of create a movement to change that for the better.
Totally. No, man. I love this, man. Dude, I want to thank you for coming on Bishop Chronicles. This has been absolutely fantastic. Tell everybody where to find you on IG. Tell them about any websites and social media so you can talk to this guy because he's amazing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my personal Instagram, if you want to just sort of chat with me, is just literally Kevin John Meredith, at Kevin John Meredith. The My business one is at Fit to Thrive Coaching, which is obviously the gym.
And
And
that's the
there's a new
number
one I've
two,
got.
fit to thrive.
Exactly. Fit to Thrive Coaching. Yeah, thank you, mate. And obviously a lot of the health retreat stuff and the well-being stuff that I do and the medicine kitchen is based on, I've just set up. Obviously, we've not talked about that, but at the Middle Path retreat, obviously that's
Yeah. Want to talk
the
about
health
that real
retreat.
quick?
If you've got time, sure.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, so the middle path, well, the middle path, a lot of people won't understand what that means. Is obviously from my kind of Chinese sort of interest background, this idea of yin and yang, and a lot of people obviously see the yin and yang and see this idea of the yin one side and yang the other side, and they very much miss the curve that runs through the middle.
Yeah.
And that the curve is the thing that represents this idea of balance, having balance in your life. You have to explore both extremes. You have to go to the far side of yin and sit around and realize that's not good for you, and you have to go to the far extremes of yang and get stressed, work too hard and work out too hard, and maybe injure yourself and go, well, that's too much. And eventually, as we get wiser, we get older, we find this like perfect balance, and that's an individual thing. And the idea of the middle path is that, so it's very much a Buddhist kind of concept. So I'm building a 12-acre woodland in North Yorkshire, so near where I live. I'm building a health retreat that basically has lots of those options. So it has an outdoor gym. It also will have a yoga deck and breath work and tai chi
Yeah,
and some kung fu, and it's got chickens, bees. It's a big food garden with an orchard. So you'll be able to come up and kind of experience food, the idea of the medicine kitchen. You'll be able to work out and kind of beast yourself a little bit. Obviously, you can get the
I
yang
love it,
side of it,
dude.
but then straight into the yoga, straight into the saunas. Yeah, so that's like we're just literally building it now. I've got a meeting next week with the landowners, and we're doing all the planning permission for it. And then yeah,
Dude,
by the end of this
so
year,
proud of you.
we'll be open probably.
Yeah, I love it, man. Might have to do some stoic retreats with some jujitsu.
Mate, as soon as anytime you're over, that's the whole idea of it is have friends up and people can start to use it for exactly that, retreats. It'll be one of the big things I want to do with it, of course, is we'll have our actual group membership, people that become members and come and use it regularly. But the whole idea on top of that is this idea of it comes from the medicine kitchen and a few other bits and work on. Is this idea of people being again work wise being so isolated from nature, and this
Yeah,
idea of how work has to be sitting in front of a desk all the time, which we know scientifically for lots of research is the most
not
unproductive
good.
possible way to work. So the idea of businesses coming up, having breakout sessions and being able to do all these different things and then come back and work together, and learning about how that actually is more productive, helps with stress, helps with so many other factors. So I want to use it as an educational team for like business leaders to
Yeah,
kind of come and understand. And again, like obviously with your what you do and sort of supporting, men in their health, their well-being, obviously stoicism being so connected to that as well. It's like get to nature, get in touch with nature, get in touch with yourself. This idea of this kind of man that has no weaknesses is just nothing in nature and no other thing in nature believes that. It's just a complete fabrication. So, those are kind of the environments where people can be themselves. You see it all the time. People get outdoors. I had someone come recently, a member who I train in the gym. He's like always like, oh, I'm not really an outdoorsy person. And he came to do a volunteer, help us out just because he's a nice guy. And he did that. He was working away. And then I saw him just sit on the bench and you sat to start looking a bit, just uncomfortable. And then I just saw him over like 10, 15 minutes while I was waiting for me to, while we were doing all the food and everyone was around.
yeah,
You just saw his just melt and start to just relax into the bench and he was taking nature in. And then when I saw him the next time, I was like, I really didn't think I'd be that bothered up there. But I don't know, it's just so nice. It's
yeah,
clearly just that connection to nature. He works in an office, he works from home, he comes to the gym. He lives a very much an indoor life. So
yeah,
it's amazing to see that change. Anxious kids get up there and all of a sudden, they're just in their element, running around, having fun, relaxed, So it's yeah, like it's a magical place.
that's exciting, man. Listen, guys, the Medicine Kitchen, again, it's on Amazon. Go get it. Okay. Use it. Right. And also, too, like, before I go, I think one of the other things that's happened is I've noticed, like, in a lot of families, especially from my generation, again, I'm 56, people love to carry their grandma's recipes, and those things are kind of going away. Right. And so for, people who maybe they don't have grandma's recipes anymore, they've lost, those connections, use a book like The Medicine Kitchen to re-engage yourself, re-engage your family, and then start recreating, those legacies in your household. Thanks again
Yeah.
for being on the pod. Uh, Substack fam, don't forget May 16th and 17th. I will be with the one and only Carlos Levexier for a 2-day no gi seminar, wrestling and jujitsu. People always try to act like it has to have beef with each other. It doesn't, right? They're cousins, just like judo and jujitsu. And I'm going to show some dope stuff. Carlos is just such an incredible, legendary coach. It's a 2-day thing, and if you sign up and you use the little discount code Grapple, all lowercase, the price drops significantly. People are signing up pretty fast. Please make sure you get on deck, and see you soon on Bishop Chronicles. Appreciate y'all. Peace.